This is AVSuperfriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AVSuperfriends. For May 5th, 2023, it's the AVSuperfriends Off the Rails. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure with the AVSuperfriends.
Hello.
My name's Chris Dector, joined today by Jamie, Marc, Larry, Justin, and a little bit of added ground hum in the background, so you can listen for that. That's just a little bit of flavor in there. We can enjoy that being added at no extra charge. On today's show, we're going to discuss convincing your clients that they need to spend more to get the experience that they think they want. We're also going to talk about bring your own meetings, and is this really a thing? But first, it's some sort of AV news. This article comes from EdSurge and is talking about digital accessibility, which is something we all need to be aware of, and this article raises some excellent points.
Be weary of.
Let me summarize it real quick here, and the link is in the show notes there. Hey, all that stuff you're putting out there for streaming, web, email, all that stuff, screen readers and, accessibility software can't see it, so that's technically illegal, and you need to fix your crap.
So stop.
So knock it off.
Don't do that.
But it raises a good point. From the standpoint of AV, standpoint of we're tied into classroom delivery, we're tied into streaming courses, streaming events. We have to be aware of all this stuff. We can't just fire it out there and let people figure it out later, because a lot of states legally require you to provide alternate, especially from the audio standpoint, but now live captioning, all that. I mean,
do we have to hire a captionist now?
100 of them.
You have to capture
one for every room.
No, I mean like for the show.
We have one. We have two.
Oh, we do. Justin, you've supposed to have been doing that for the last 2 years.
Oh, son of a bitch.
We've been paying you this long for that service.
Yes,
Justin, we're going to have a discussion about your AVSF status.
Your performance review might have a negative mark on it.
Metrics of success are not looking too good.
I'm not going to ask any more questions on the show then from now on.
Your ability to sign is not what your resume says. So, but yeah, so what are we? I mean, I'm rolling out a new lecture capture system, and one of the big things there was captioning. That was a huge part of that discussion, and capability and how to do it, and can it carry over captions that if somebody manually entered them from the previous system, can it automatically generate them? That was a big part of the discussion. What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, we're definitely having that in mind. It comes up a lot within our LMS, our video, all that stuff for the digital experience side of it, and for events and the like, and in classrooms, we're definitely cognizant of providing accessibility. In this article, it made me think a lot about how instructors are using digital content in the classroom, and what does that mean? And it's not intentionally called out that way in this article, but it made me think about that, right? And so our instructors and or people we're working with putting presentation material together for the class in an accessible way in this new world of lots of different content streams, lots of different content overwhelming the student experience from the front of that room, have we stepped back and say, is that really accessible, and what does it mean to other folks that may not be able to experience that in the same way?
Yeah, I kind of got the same thing. The article kept mentioning all the PDFs, which are, I'm guilty of it too. That's a great way of saving different pieces of content in a way that you can send out and kind of know that how you send it out is how it's going to be received. But so much of that can't be read by these software platforms. And that's something I'm reconsidering in what little material I put out for like instructor notes on how to use the learning stations and things like that I'm now thinking, well, maybe I'm not doing it the right way to make it accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are doing it the wrong way. I think most of us are doing it the wrong way because there's so much that you have to be cognizant of when thinking about accessibility. And it all does a little bit fall back on, what is that term, best effort? So finding the middle ground of doing the best that you can to make your content accessible without breaking the bank is sometimes a challenge.
Well, there's best effort, and then there's also legal requirement
Yeah,
too.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, do you all carry simple assisted listening in all your standard classrooms at this point? For, that's not exactly this, but you are at least providing that.
No, it's related. I was thinking
No.
about that. So it's either part of the standard classroom, or there is the ability to add it very quickly if that comes up.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
That's been one of the things raised here is, wait, why are we putting these in every room, and do we have to have a couple of headsets in every room? And I said, technically, yes. Or
Sort
legally,
of, yeah.
yes,
The
you
way
should.
the rules, right. Yeah, you're supposed to. But that's, like Chris is saying, it's not financially possible. For us, it's not. For every classroom, like,
Yeah, and working with your accessibilities office, they'll
You gotta make an accommodation.
that's the best relationship you can have in that regards. I'm with you guys. When we changed all of our LMS and capture systems, that was a requirement for all of the captioning sources. Our streaming, our live streams now go through a service that the television stations use.
That service isn't Justin, is it? Because he's not doing it.
Yeah, don't
no,
use
not-
that one.
No,
I'm still
we
getting those
fired
checks
that.
from UMKC, though.
Still cashing
I'm still getting those checks, buddy.
What he says he
So-
can do, he can't do.
Yeah. Well, sometimes.
Hey, it's best
Anyway.
effort.
I've heard that before.
But and the same with assisted listening or the alternate display connections and things. I have accommodations so that we can take it in at a moment's notice, except for the very large, more used. My breakdown is if it's a room that's used by the public more often than not.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of
Exactly.
our rooms aren't used by the general public, but we have the theater spaces, we have the big auditoriums, we have the
Yep.
multi-purpose rooms where you can't account for those people don't check in because they're coming in off the street. They don't check in with the accessibilities office like students do. They're just random people off the street. And those areas I go above and beyond and have the stuff ready to go at right there. A lot of the other planes, they're on the shelf, ready to move as soon as I'm asked to.
And Jamie, to follow up on that, though, a lot of those places that are the outward-facing, large auditoriums, things like that, even if the systems are in like a drawer in the lectern, if there's a couple hundred people in the room, how does the person know to go up to the person at the lectern and ask for it? I mean,
There's a
that's the
sign on the
question.
wall. The sign on the wall with the little person.
Well, we have
It's like you
those.
just start asking
Slippery slope
everybody
here.
until somebody gives you
Yeah.
a headset. right?
Beware.
We have those, but I would venture a guess that 85% or more of those sort of public events are staffed by somebody from our events people. And all of those events people are very aware of where those things lie.
Yeah.
So it's not a on your own kind of thing. It is, but it's not. Most of those, there is some events person, whether it's admissions for new student orientation day or something. Somebody is there that knows that equipment's there because obviously they want to put the best foot forward, which means that's the first step.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people probably share that audio side of it. I want to talk about this visual side for a moment, though, because I think that's topic du jour here, because I've attended a few presentations recently. They were talking about the classroom experience of the future.
Ooh, of the future. Tell me all about it.
And it was very
Never
much
heard of
built
that.
around lots of screens of content, borderlining on no way in hell going to be correct image size for the person in the back of the room.
Wait, were
no
you
matter
part of our
what
conversation on this? What's happening?
What's that?
Am I listening to a previous episode of the show?
But I asked specifically, well, how are you accommodating any ADA piece? And it said, oh, it's accommodated through BYOD.
Shut up.
And I was like,
We're
makes
just going
me
to stream
feel,
it to your phone.
That makes me feel dirty if I had to say, yeah, you can be accommodated as long as you have your own thing and you're doing this and blah, blah, blah. Like that. Is that even the right approach? And that seems to be the get out of jail free card that I'm seeing people that want to justify these
Well, I was going to say
overwhelming
that
extremes.
it's definitely not a get a jail free card, but what it is a kick the can down the road card.
Right, because that feels wrong to me. Saying, okay,
No, I agree because it requires them to have either a device capable of that or their own laptop or whatever that is. Not everyone coming in is going to have that.
No. But I have found in my minimal experience with the visually impaired that are coming for that is they do have their own device, and that stream is acceptable because they can make it bigger, they can move it around. And that has been a fallback. I don't think it is the best experience. I don't. And so that's where if I don't have a direct connection right there on the podium for an output feed to some device, I've even had a cart that I've drug in and put where I needed to put it when asked. But getting that stream out, but I'm with you, it feels cheap and dirty and not necessarily...
Is it even best practice, I guess? Is kind of
no, I don't.
Should we be okay with that as
it's best effort. It's not best practice.
I feel like that's not even the best effort.
Yeah,
well,
I think it's
it depends on your infrastructure.
It's an effort. Yes,
it's an effort. Because that's like if you don't have one, I could see maybe somebody trying to do that at last minute, but then you're relying on your wireless network and all kinds of other things in the background to make that experience.
Here's where I don't like it. Here's where I don't like it. Are you setting precedent for yourself for acceptance? He's like, well, we deemed that that's good enough for this accessibility piece, but now I'm going to just extrapolate that, it must be best for furthest viewer as well. And so why even have any correct sizing? To hell with all the standards altogether. Like, does it even matter at this point? What are we doing
why are we
here?
in this room together? Yeah. Why can't we just watch the stream at home?
Because to me, that's the slope.
Before you even get to that point, Justin, I think his point is more of, and correct me on this, Mark, but like, if you can provide that capability for viewer size, or viewing size, then you don't have to worry about farthest viewer. You don't have to worry about distance or element height or any of that. And you could just say, I'm just going to put a 55-inch TV up here because it's cheaper.
Right.
If you want it bigger, if you want to be able to read this Excel file, bring your own freaking laptop.
That seems to be the fallback that I'm hearing. And I think that's a bogus answer.
I don't know if infrastructure can handle that.
I would agree with in the restream.
Jamie can tell us all about his new building with thousands of access points.
Yeah,
one per person.
That one can handle that.
You can't plug in your laptop because you have to unplug the access point.
But I mean, am I just a dinosaur here? Am I? I mean, I was the one who brought up the no front classroom altogether and said, just view it on your own thing, and I'm okay with that. But something just feels wrong about that. Saying, if you can't see it, just go ahead and use your own laptop. You're fine.
It's a little lazy.
Yeah.
I think it's a good alternate source. I don't think it should be the primary content stream.
No.
Now, this whole conversation is really interesting because we're a whole bunch of people that don't have some of these disabilities, right? I'm sure somebody listening does. I'd like to know.
Yeah.
If you're putting in AV stuff and you also use the accessibilities thing personally, what should we be doing?
Yeah, is there a preference? Which way? What is the path that's like least restrictive or like?
Because that's what I think the article was like, look, this digital thing is more than just do you have access or not. It's also how you're providing it to the folks that. So
does any movie theater or out there that you've all experienced have any visual aids for anybody? I mean, you would think that they're public and they would. But
most of the movie theaters for years, for 30 or 40 years, movie theaters have provided audio assistance systems or captioning systems.
Right.
But I would think at a certain point they're probably getting away with it. I don't know, but I'm guessing from a purely visual standpoint, they're getting away with it because that screen is really big and you can go sit close and make that work. But yeah,
that's what I'm wondering is what is their best effort in that situation? What do they do?
We're seeing some of this. It's becoming more common at stage plays that there is the closed captioned scrolling bar, right? We're seeing that more often.
I thought you said there's a descriptive audio and the person sitting next to you describing the entire show.
We're seeing more often.
Just really
because every play I go to, I get that guy sitting like one row behind me.
That concerts have.
Is that the same guy from the beginning? Look at him. He's talking to a friend now. Like, shut up.
iMagging and have special sections for sign language interpreters and things. We're seeing these things more and more and more. So, what do we need to do?
Hire more sign language people.
Interpreters.
What are good things that we can have on the shelf ready to go?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something to be aware of. I'd like to hear from people who experience that or support that or I'm happy to improve because I'm sure there's stuff I can do better just with anything else.
I would say we all probably need to improve and constantly stay abreast of what is out there around this capability. I'm guilty of it as well. I do see different sessions, but it's been a while since I've seen anything that's been groundbreaking. So show me something new. I want to see some cutting edge accessibility technologies being deployed in learning spaces.
All All right, well, check into that. Maybe idea for a future discussion.
The Braille video projection screen.
There's some interesting. I used doing
That's
some interesting
really
stuff
cool.
with Braille, which I think is cool.
I wonder how
Did
that
you
would.
see that new OLED thing that they do? They're doing that.
Yeah.
The tactile bubbles.
Well,
That's really cool.
I
That's
would
cool.
think that Braille video screen. Somebody's already invented it out there.
I'm sure.
You got it. Oh.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Come back. We're going to talk about some selling some stuff to some clients here. So I'm going to insert a commercial right here.
Hey y'all, I've got this new show I got to tell you about. It's called AVSF Live. That's LIVE exclamation point. First off, all you need to do is go to avsf.live.live, not .com, not .net, but .live. Yes, it's a website, does work. We're going to try out this new live video thing. It's probably going to go over like a hair in a biscuit. You got to check it out. Come to the tweeters and look us up on LinkedIn to find out more information. We'll see y'all soon.
So for our first segment today, I want to talk about this concept of, I just refer to it as selling AV, and I know some of us bristle at that.
I hate that word, man.
And I get it. I mean, because I think we all do. We're not so much selling as much as trying to convince or trying to.
It's anti-sales. I get it.
Because in higher ed, we always talk about how we're not trying to sell stuff. We're not trying.
Right.
We just want you to have the best experience possible in this space. But so let's talk about that idea of, and Mark, you brought this up. How do we convince a department client or whoever on campus, a college who's building some spaces or wants to upgrade stuff or whatever, that they have to spend more than $3,000 to get that experience that they think that they want? And how do we drive towards that?
There's a lot in this. This is multifaceted. I think that
you got 8 minutes. So
let's
talk
blast
fast.
through this. I think it starts with that initial ask, right? And we all have different versions and different ways this comes in. You get a ticket. Hey, I'd like to explore some collaboration technologies or whatever it may be, a conference room. And there's nothing worse than somebody says, I need to do a new thing. We went out and bought this stuff. Can you come put it in? Right? That's like the worst version of this.
Oh, we need a new space and we already bought half of it.
We already bought half of it because we went on Amazon and we felt like we did a good job. So
that's the easiest no to me, though. That's like the easiest way to say no.
But you're not acknowledging the need still exists to have a quality experience in that space. So to me, it's understanding and being able to articulate the value of what's actually happening in there, right? And that may go without saying. We do this day in and day out. But it's that culture of scarcity versus culture of plenty. And ultimately what somebody is asking you is, we'd like to be able to have some capacity in this room. But at the end of the day, I want to call you if it goes wrong. So what is the value of that? Like that's,
or at the end of the day, I'm still going to call you.
Yes, I'm going to call you no matter what is. If you come in this room and provide me anything, I'm going to be calling you forever. It's just like when you built a computer for your uncle 10 years ago and he went and got whatever on it and he called you for everything he shouldn't have clicked on. It's that same thing, right? You're going to be held accountable for whatever happens in this room forever. So what is it going to cost for you to agree to do that? Because that's really what they're asking for is we want to have success in here, whatever it may be, but we want to make sure that we can call you to support us in that, right? And articulating that. And I think to me, that was the conversation we wanted to have, is that we all have these standards. We have these pieces that we look at to deploy day in and day out that meet our criteria, that are within our service culture. How do we inform clients that this is how we have to look at these spaces to be able to provide you that support? That's my entry point in this conversation. Is that fair? Yeah, I know in Western Kentucky it's a different world. So
well, no, it's just, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So
okay,
I mean, there's
unpack it.
Well, so we got two lines that we're crossing: a support line and an experience line, in my opinion. So in my
head,
head,
rip them apart.
They're the same.
They're the same thing.
They don't necessarily.
We're supporting
the
experience.
Same,
attached with Velcro.
They're not the same to the client. So when we're going through this discussion, so at our college, we get a ticket. Hey, we want to upgrade the AV in this room. We want to do these things. There's an expectation they have in their head of what that experience is going to look like, whether they thought about it or not. They've got this thing, and it is our job to get that experience out of their head. So, you get the ticket and you read through it and you go and meet with them and you realize it's not anything that was in the ticket. So you're asking them some questions and you're going through And they want this other thing that's completely freaking different. Well, that's fine. That's great. So now it is my job to set expectations on what that experience looks like. So actually take them through the workflow. Mm-hmm. Now, you really don't want to point your camera at the whiteboard because this is what it's going to mean for your instruction. No, you really don't want to do this. You don't want to do that because that's what it's going to mean for your instruction. And this is also what it means for the students.
Oh, I see a finger. There's a finger going on.
There's a finger.
Look at it go.
There's a separate conversation in my head where I'm like, okay, for us to be able to support this, I have to be able to do these things. I have
Justin,
to quote these types of devices, and it has to be installed in this manner. So, for instance, this happened just a few weeks ago, where working with a faculty member for a classroom, this is the solution you need, and this is the cost. This is what we can support, and this is the experience you're after. Okay, whatever. We go to a larger room like an auditorium. Now I have to explain why this different stuff, because they want to do the same thing in the auditorium as a classroom. Well, how do you explain to them why it costs more? Well, if you support this projector in this room, why can't you just use the same projector and put it in a bigger room? Because that hurts the experience. Yes, we can support that projector, but now you're killing the student experience. That's two separate things in my head.
I want to come back to the classroom part in a minute, but Larry, go ahead.
Get him.
Justin, I just want to say that what you just said is sales. Sales is educating the customer so they can make the right decision. So as much as you don't like that discussion, I did pre-sales for 13 years. You do sales in your current role. What you did is being a good salesperson. That's Larry, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Larry.
But now he has to
tell you what, that's coming.
Larry, all I'm saying is I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
He doesn't
Just
like
don't
the verb.
call what I'm saying sales, because I hate that word. It's a dirty
You're
word.
not sales, but you are selling the right solution to the customer and educating them to make a better choice.
We're just educating them on the experience they're going to have. If you want to call it sales or potatoes or giraffes, that's up to you, Larry.
Half giraffes.
I don't want to call it potatoes.
Okay, so let's scope box this.
Though.
I want to scope box this into the conference room experience, just because I think it can go everywhere real quick. It seems to be the segment of my portfolio that has the most growth, but it's also the one that people feel like they can go out and buy widgets and tchotchkes galore, and they can create that solution. And
it's the easiest Amazon shop.
Exactly. And so I do a lot of conference room consulting or collaboration space consulting, and I often sell what is it? Why is being able to have low friction communication in this space important to you and your organization? Explain that. I want to know why you don't like having a laptop set up and spending 20 minutes trying to figure out if people are connected or not. I want to know who's going to be in the room, how important, how valuable is their time in this room, let alone the person who's not in the room. So let's explore that and really understand what's at risk. If we do not do this correctly, what is at risk to the people in this space and the people that may not be able to communicate with you in this space? Do any of you take that angle?
I take that angle, and to take it a step forward, when I meet with them, I find a space that's done properly, that's close by, that I can connect on a call with and let them experience what it is that what a good experience provides if they're willing to spend the money it takes to do that.
Right. Okay. Do you do that same kind of thing? We have some spaces set up just for testing here as well. I don't know if that's a common practice at campuses. Chris, do you have any flagship conference rooms you like to use?
Not in that sense, because there's none that I'm really happy with. Well, I take it back. There's a couple that I am, but the clientele don't like people just coming into their boardroom.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah. Okay.
Don't mind me. What I try to do early on is try to discern what that budget is, what that expected budget is.
Sure.
Because they often start these conversations with a number in mind. And then they talk about all the great things they're going to do in this space and all the improvements to their teaching and their meetings and all that. It's just, and you try to really just are you guys talking 3,000 or 30,000?
Well, I at the end of this segment, I do want us all to be willing to come forward and say, what does our baseline package look like? from the first number in the correct amount of
happy to do
zeros.
that, but
It just kind
I
of.
do like the idea of building out. To your question, I do like the idea of building out like a proper space that I can invite people to. Now I have one down the hall here that is a department conference room. It's about 100 feet away, and it would be a great one to do that. The problem is the stuff that's in there now is not really appropriate to what we'd be, specifying in 2023 for a modern conferencing meeting space.
Right. I'm sure there's an integrator out there saying, well, we can't even have this conversation unless we start talking about the walls and the ceiling and the floor and blah, blah, blah. I get it. I'm not designing a room and bringing in architecture for this. Like I'm often asked, what is the stuff needed to accommodate this experience? I get that there's a lot more in nuance into that. I don't want to discredit the value of the properly designed space. That's not this exercise.
I find that when I get into these situations and these discussions, it really has nothing to do, it has things to do with budget, but it is, they found some sale. Well, I can just get this 75-inch screen from Costco. And then I saw on some commercial that popped up on my Amazon feed that I could just get an AVCam and I'll be happy.
Right. They're being the AV heroes. They're going to be the hero.
Oftentimes when I go to them, and I we'll call it education, because it is sales at some point. Once I point out the service contract for their Costco special is, it's really affordable. It's free because we don't do it. Really, then you give them the total price and say, hey, look, if you did it this way, you have to come up with $1,000 more, and you would have spent piecemealing this from some internet special because you didn't buy yourself a mount, you didn't buy yourself a thing, you didn't get yourself this, you didn't. And then they kind of go,
well, Jamie, you're supposed to provide that. You come in and do that.
Oh,
but don't you just do that when you install it?
That's not. That's not as expensive as I thought it was going to be in these kind of spaces, Mark. These small conference room, huddle room kind of things. Let's not get into the bigger spaces. You want to limit this to under 10 people?
Sure. Yeah, I have two targets. I usually
have
hit
two sizes,
they
but
work
one of
really
them
well. Yeah,
is relatively inexpensive, and the other one can get crazy in a hurry.
I'm just gonna say, careful, Jamie. You get much smaller than that. You're in AVCam town.
Well, but sometimes that is the acceptable thing, right?
No.
Sometimes.
Nope.
Every now and then.
I'm with Chris. It is not.
The number of spaces I've been in the last 6 months where people are talking about improving the, classrooms, meeting rooms, whatever, but improving the Zoom, the general Zoom. I use Zoom as the Kleenex, the generic term, capability. And there's an AVCam in the corner already that has already been identified as like, we bought this, it didn't work, I put it over there. What can you do for me now?
Conspiracy of the day, of the week here. Was OWL designed just to be able to put out there to make a weird experience so that you could sell more full, correct experiences?
That's my belief.
I'd love to think that, but
yeah, that would be great.
That's just a marketing ploy. I don't know. Or all those things.
It's
in
a great
category?
tool for us to show people what not to do.
No, I do believe that there is a correct place for that tool.
Yes, I do.
I'm not disagreeing.
Just because it's 1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000, but there is.
Do you guys want my rule on AVCams? Because there are places
where there's nothing else in the room and you just have a laptop and you can touch it. Is the solution.
I've never respected AVCam. Never will.
Everyone at the seated at their seat can almost touch it. There's nothing else in the room, and it's maximum of 6 to 8 people.
Yeah. Almost is almost too vague there, Chris.
So if that's your use case, go
wild. Distance.
Yeah. Specified distance. I'll do it in cubits. If it's within 3 cubits.
So going back to that.
I do find that they don't. Yeah, I do find that sometimes our solution, the right solution, isn't out of their budget. They just didn't know. And they didn't think about asking until they saw the Walmart special or until.
And they've already spent half of the budget that they would actually need on something else, and now you have to make it work.
Also, if you get we've gotten this too, where we get an equipment list in a ticket and saying we need this. Don't go into that meeting thinking that they're set on that. I've been into those meetings going to needs analysis ready for a fight, and they were like, oh, I don't know. We just still know how this works. We were just trying to help you out.
You'd make a great salesperson, man. I'm just saying.
What?
So is it the Rexing
selling
Lexus
AV
dealer?
with Justin.
Accurate. What are you selling?
Nothing.
Let's not talk about total cost.
Well,
Let's talk about
I'm not even saying that word anymore.
What can
I had a conversation this morning.
What can I do?
I had a conversation this morning with the department who recognized that their current space It's about 10 years old, and it's an old, H323 standards-based, system.
Mm-hmm.
They recognize it is massively overbuilt for how they actually use it. And because what they said, it was about 2 months ago, they said, how much to do? We want this space, but we want it modern. I said, okay. So I did almost a 1-for-1. You've got 3 screens in here. You got 3 screens, all this. You got 2 cameras. I did exactly that because that's what they said they wanted. Whoa. And then they saw the price and they said, well, we don't want that. And I was like, oh, but what you told me was you wanted to match the current capabilities of the space as existing.
What were the capabilities?
No. Well, so they wanted the ability, it's the old people plus content model. It's the ability to, the room is oddly shaped, so they have supplementary displays. It gets nutty that way. They've got, multiple microphones more microphones on the table than they need because everything, you got to just reach over and mute it right here. It's things like that. And then when they talk about how, so I said, we went back to the needs analysis. Okay, tell me how you actually use the room now. Oh, like 5 of us come in, we sit down here, we look at that screen and that camera.
Then we join Zoom and just share off our laptop. Zoom that's launched on our laptop.
So I was like, all right, this project the price for this just got cut in half. And they were like, oh, well, what about this? So now we're looking at other rooms in the building because now they can put that funds towards something else because they recognize that the space they're in, they had, big money donor when the building was new 12 years ago and they went all out and now they have a different experience. They expect a different experience because even though they have all these bells and whistles, they don't actually use any of the bells and whistles.
I wonder actually how many times they've ever used those bells and whistles.
Full bells and whistles.
My guess is very little. Yeah. If it probably that first, day one, check this
just
out.
A waste of money and waste of time.
That plays into the psyche though, because they've already are pot committed to this giant monstrosity of a mountain of money. And they're like, well, we're going to have to run this thing until it dies. So we're going to keep it around way too long because we were so invested in it. It's not going to be compatible with the future at all.
It's 11 years old now.
Yep.
And it's coming, by the time we get around to it, it's going to be, almost 12 years old. And that is way too long.
But do you ever stop and have the conversation where how critical do you look at this space as your infrastructure to your organization? The work that happens in here, is it critical? Yes or no? And do people even understand that as a conversation? We have some enrollment offices that are really involved with remote students coming in, meeting with their actual liaisons to the university, and that connection is very critical. That's their first point of touch with the university, right? So having that quality experience, I would say, is absolutely critical. If you have offices where you have remote workers needing to interact with folks that are going to be on-prem, that capability is critical. So
I would argue that all the requests that I get are critical to that person.
Sure. But does they're critical, but does their interpretation of what the cost to provide critical infrastructure is, are they in alignment?
Are they?
That's a different question, right?
That's what we're getting at.
I mean, really, across campus, and this is coming from 2 years ago where they sent most of the administration home for a year. There's very few of these conference rooms now that I would consider to be mission critical all the time. If
that's okay,
the system goes, it's not like a classroom to me. If you're not the provost level or CIO or something of that nature, most of these other rooms, if the room is down for a day, they can all go in their offices and have a Zoom call and
if that is the experience that they say is success. But if there's a component where we're going to have people meeting and showing and interacting with one another, to me, that's unpacking the true value of what's happening in this space.
Yeah, in me, if it's not student facing.
Well, we'll call it client facing. There's a lot of business offices that, I do get to, yes, Mark, I do ask that question. What is the crux? What are the most often used activities in this space? Well, it's a lunchroom. Okay, then outcam it is.
Mission critical.
Yeah.
But if it is admissions, if it is financial aid, if it is executive, something where they're bringing in marketing clients and things, if that screen doesn't turn on for some reason, they have just potentially lost revenue.
Exactly.
Money and an embarrassment and everything else. So when you get to that stage, it is a lot easier to explain your return on investment. You're investing $6,000 rather than $1,200, but and I support it, and I can all but guarantee it will turn on 90% of the time.
Right. And if it is failed, I'm going to have the spare thing to come down here tomorrow or later on today, even if you have an hour for me to go in here and swap it out, and you'll be running again by the end of the day.
And I think that's that's where you're going, Mark, is that's the conversation is this is critical to you having an investment.
Right.
So if you're making $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a student that walks through here,
right,
then
doesn't it seem awfully foolish to put at risk like $1,000 versus $7,000 or $8,000? Would you risk your organization over $6,000?
I had this conversation with one of our athletic teams, the coach, because a lot of the recruitment comes over conference calls.
Right.
Well, they wanted to look good. They wanted that student athlete to look at this screen and go, wow, his camera is like 10 times better than anybody else. They're coaches, they don't care. But that was important to them, was that they stood out, because now we all know athletics is an arms race.
I was just going to say that.
Who looks the best, right? And when you're a mid-sized school or a small school, that's a cheap way to look a lot better.
Right. You know, additional $6,000, $7,000 into a conference room of this, and that's not even all the bells and whistles and all the stuff for that. Like, that's not what I'm talking. Just to best foot forward, right, in that space, that initial touch point for somebody that's going to be their first insight into your university or organization, what's the value of that, of putting that best foot forward and having that be like low friction and work the right way the first time?
So let's look at that. You said it doesn't even have to have all the bells and whistles. What are you talking about?
My small stuff.
Tell me. Yeah, tell me what it is.
So my typical room, I'm running, I'll be honest, we have a lot of Crestron UC SB1s out there.
Okay, well, you're doing it wrong.
That's fine.
Oh.
It works. Small.
Actually, the Crestron the UC SB1 is pretty solid because of the freaking camera.
In the camera, that for the small type of space with a nice,
took the joke away.
65-inch display, installed small form factor PC, wireless keyboard and mouse, a simple HDMI pass-through on there. That gets it done for a lot of the stuff out there. Now, I can scale up from that and go a lot larger, but that's a pretty low cost of entry.
What size display did you say you
like
threw
65.
65.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but,
Wait, let me look at my numbers back here.
You can go bigger, you can go smaller. I like to bring people in around there so they get.
Is that an install cost too, or just parts? Or you guys don't
just
charge
parts.
for install?
Our install is minimal. Like we don't really nickel and dime people on installation cost.
I charge people only in nickel and dimes.
That's fine. You got to pay in just a stack of nickels and dimes.
Yes.
Well, that's because in Wyoming he can drive a big truck.
But we can come in like sub $7,000 on easily on these systems all day long. Like it's even way under that actually. So
that's where we're at. Anywhere from a 65 to an 86, and sometimes it depends on how big a room is or how much money they have.
Now there are infrastructure pieces. Though I'm not somebody out there's freaking out. You almost crashed your car. I get it. Pay attention. Like there's cost, there's network, there's power.
Well, I was going to say, does that include things like a wall box if needed, power if needed, or is that set? You're talking
if I'm
just
going in post,
stuff.
I will tell you right now, I don't need a wall box. It is nice to have a wall box. I'm retroing. I'm probably not going to provide a wall box.
See, my little kit now is that little AVFI slimline credenza, the one bay. That's $600.
I'll do pullouts. We do pullout slide racks behind them just to mount things.
I just stick on conduit to go from the little credenza, because it's like 4 inches of stick on conduit to get up to the TV, and there's no penetrations into the wall. Typically, there's already power and data sitting there, so the infrastructure is negligible. And
I try to not have cords coming down on my install. I like it to be free on the wall, clean, and go that way. That's what I like to do. I'm not saying it has to be. I like it to be that way.
What about general pricing contingency? I'm curious on this. You guys carrying like a contingency buffer for the oh shit moment?
Yeah,
or
I carry some buffer in there. It's a few $100s one way or the other. But I'm not carrying the infrastructure costs. I say I will act as your liaison to facilities and all that stuff, and I'll give you an honest quote for that.
I was about to say I'm not carrying infrastructure costs, but I am, because in talking with facilities, they would prefer that I spec, as part of the gear, some of the wall boxes, because then they can ensure that they have the right one. So that does add several $100s per.
But now, if it's a capital project and there's nothing there right now, or a large-scale renovation, I'm going to put a box back there, and it's all going to be there. But I'm not going to force somebody to have to go in to get drywall and all this stuff. Like, you don't need it.
I do.
I
Constantly.
don't.
I don't.
Because
The
in
wall's
most
already
cases,
drywall. You sheetrock it again.
You're
gonna double rock that wall.
3/4 inch smaller. I'll lay it around.
I'm shrinking campus by 3/4 of an inch at a time.
It helps acoustics.
In most of these
That's
cases,
what I tell them. It's for acoustics.
In most of these cases, I don't. We want to keep it as clean as we can.
Yeah.
But I don't do a lot of the extra facilities in wall boxes and things, just simply because they're already being cheap. I've already, shut your ears, Justin, sold them a different product.
You've designed them a solution that they like.
I'm sub 7.
And they bought into it.
Yeah. And
you didn't use the
sub
word
7.
sell.
I've used that Crestron soundbar thing. I'm now using the BYOM Parlay soundbar video bar thing and a PC.
That's what we've been using. Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, the Crestron one in particular, there was a screaming deal when they cut the price in half about 5 years ago, and it was like $800. It was like, I can almost buy this cheaper than I can buy the Hudley camera.
Yeah.
And now it's back up to whatever it was, $1,500, $1,400.
They're still coming in for 12 or so, whatever.
12,
whatever. But it's a good product, and I think things in that nature. That's not the only product like that, but I think something like that's a little more
and there's
mature,
other ones out there that are priced
really well.
very aggressively, and it solves a lot of what we're trying to do. And in the appropriate space, I can put this thing up there, and there's a lot of them out there that Bose, Yamaha, Aver. There's probably a dozen manufacturers who make that all-in-wonder camera bar, conference bar, whatever. It does a hell of a job.
You know what I don't use? Any of the Nook or Poly BS all-in-wonder little zoomy TeamZ.
Don't do a lot of those.
Logitech-y things. I don't use those.
Zoomy
I just put in a
things.
regular computer.
Yep. So around here, do you guys all try to leverage an installed computer for your? And this is going to lead into the next conversation.
Installed computer.
Yeah.
And most of the departments are all on board with it.
Yeah, everybody wants
all
it.
of them are.
I've had some pushback.
I was going to say, I've had some who pushed back before, and now they're coming back and being like,
yeah,
could we just put a computer in here?
Exactly.
Can we?
So, most
Usually
of the time
that's I just retired my other one.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not recycling your laptop to hang behind this display. So
I put the full tower on the floor, and we just run all the cables up behind the display. It's fine.
There you go.
But usually when we kind of go back and revisit this conversation, and when maybe they would have said, "Oh, I was on Amazon, I found this blah 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 insert cheap camera manufacturer of choice here, and it's sub a couple $100. Why can't I do that?" And Justin, this is where I need your salesmanship skills to understand how do I get somebody from the cheap widget to the few $1,000s. And when we talk about that totality of the experience, best foot forward, supportable, spares on hand, minimizing downtime, is that not sales? Tell me if I'm right or wrong.
I don't know what sales is to you all, but I don't want.
But you're really good at it.
But you're really good at it.
I want no part of that shit.
And don't get me wrong, there are people that are like, yeah, we just can't afford that. I get it. That's going to happen too. But
that happens. And that's where we have that experience. I base everything on the experience, and we talk about the experience. So it's like, hey, we want to do these things, and we pick this out. Okay, well, I understand you pick that out. For one, we can't support that, whatever. And two, even if you bought that and hung it yourself and you thought it was great, you're going to realize down the road it's not so great. And I just say those things. And either people believe me or they don't. And when people don't believe me, they call me back in a year or two, like we were just talking about, to fix whatever they screwed up. A lot of the times we've had to have these discussions to where my boss's boss gets involved. And we had a couple of those recently where it comes to a point where it's more of a process problem for us. So the dean wants a conference room and he expects it to do this. Okay, great. So we go to the meeting. He doesn't show up for the meeting. His assistant was there. We talk it out. The assistant says, yeah, this is great. This is where they're putting in quartz countertops and carpet and all this shiny furniture, and everything is brand new.
I love shiny
but
furniture.
They're reusing the old AV in there because they can't afford it. Because he just didn't want to spend the money on it. We know that he can afford it. He in his mind thinks that this is the experience in his head that he's after. So he's just going to do it no matter what. That dean's going to leave in a year or two, and then we'll fix it down the road.
So
that
you
shit
bring up a
happens all the
valid
time.
point in where it is on the value stream, where they actually acknowledge it being important. And I often see it be the office assistance problem and not critical infrastructure baked into our operational budget of what we need to be successful.
Because that tells you something. If a dean requests something and you show up to a meeting and they put their assistant there, what is that telling you? That's telling you that the dean really doesn't think this is that important.
No, it's I'm willing to pay this person to sit in for me.
I had this discussion on a project the other day, and somebody said, we're talking about the executive director of this program really wants to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, great, well, let's find a time next week when we can all get in the room and we can stand there, and it'll be a lot faster for us to do it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, she won't be able to make that meeting. Well, why not? Well,
when
she's just
can
gonna tell
she
me
make
to
the
do it.
meeting? Well, she doesn't have time to make that meeting. Well,
And that's what I said.
She doesn't have time to meet with me, then she doesn't want that conference room. Tough shit.
Right, well, and that's kind of what I got to was in a little more polite way, but said
That's the summary.
Remember, Justin's
she
not
can't be
selling
there,
this
and I
shit,
said,
so he
I said,
doesn't
why
care.
not? I said, well, because she'll just have me, the assistant, the office manager, figure it out. Which said to me, okay, then this person really doesn't care. They just see it as numbers. And then, Mark, to your earlier point, like I do not think they see these particular spaces in their area as critical to the business case of their space, even though I think many others would make that argument.
Yeah.
Which is why this is now becoming a larger meeting. There'll be some faculty members there. There'll be some more of the admin side of people there. I'm trying to make sure that the director of this program is there, because even if she personally does not see this as being important, I think there are members of her team who do, and we need to make sure that those voices are heard. So it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. But before we go to break here, I want to do a little bit around the horn. We got small, medium, and like large and beyond. Give me your rough estimates on where you're at. I'll start first. Small cuddle huddle, little bitty itty bitty collaboration space.
5 people?
Whatever. Yeah, come in there. We're looking at like anywhere between $6,000-$7,000 ish. Move up from there. My type 2 larger space is going to have a little more.
That's West Coast money there.
Accoutrements. Maybe we're going to even do a whiteboard camera in this kind of system. We're going to move up to a non-integrated system. It's going to be ceiling microphones, ceiling distributed audio, nice camera at the front of the room. We're looking at probably around 12 to 15-ish. That's kind of where I'm at in there. Larger display, obviously, and that's ish. These are ish numbers. So that's where I'm at. Who wants to come up next? Take a swing at this. And I'm going to be
I mean, I think we're all using slightly different definitions, but I'll rattle off some numbers here. So, and I do want to state, so when I started building out, for lack of a better term, standards or packages, I suppose. So when people call up and say they want a conference room, I can say, I know roughly what this number is going to cost at a minimum. The way I built these out, because there's so many underbuilt spaces on campus, I am carrying a huge amount of wall boxes, infrastructure, all that, because so I've got leadership backing me on this, that these are worst case numbers. So it's almost like a not to exceed number as opposed to a live quote. So I am also carrying a not insubstantial 25% contingency across the board on parts and labor, because I would rather come in. Yeah, I'd rather come in and scare the crap out of them.
We have some of that baked in, but we
and dial it back.
Try to keep it where we can.
So my
10 to 12.
Also, by the way, personally, I'm getting sick and tired of conference rooms with 55-inch displays. So my standard display for conference rooms now is an 86. Deal with it. If that's too big for your space,
boy, that crushes your first. Man, I hope you do everything ADM.
So, all right. So anyway, basic system again, including wall box mount, contingency, all that stuff. And install cost, I'm looking at 12. I'm sorry, and that is the absolute worst case, not to exceed number.
That's your simple foot in the door. Let's collaborate. Non-owl cam.
Yes, yeah. If you're not in that 12 range, then we're done. Now it rarely actually ever costs that amount, but that's the number that we throw out there. That's an 86. That's a camera bar. That's basic system laptop input, installed computer, wireless keyboard, mouse, et cetera, et cetera. I go up from there. There's a midpoint one because I deliberately wedged in a midpoint that has a better camera on it, and a fancier control system with touch panel. They get a little more executive feel. That one's 18.
Okay.
And there's a massive jump from there because screw it, I'm going big.
You're going boutique. Here we go.
And it's 38, again, installed, carrying 25% contingency. So everyone yelling at their car stereos who just said, holy shit, take 25% off of that. calm down.
Get you a
I just
deal.
said that actually. Yeah.
We're gonna get you a
That-
deal
that
on
is
this.
a-
We're gonna get you in this today.
Howdy.
That's so that's massive display. That's beam tracking, ceiling microphones.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
is
it's the real
auto
deal.
tracking cameras. That
If-
is. Wait, I'm not done yet.
I got
That
a real
is-
question though. If your standard
All right, go
room, like your basic one has an 86, how big is this freaking monitor that you're fitting in this room?
It's,
Those-
it's
the
21 by
The
9.
people in that room are looking at that monitor like this.
You can't, suppose you can't see it. The mic is
Hey,
right
I'm
up
just
against Justin's
throwing
face.
that out there. Also, I have found it's way easier for me to start big and say it's going to be 18 grand into your conference room, and they throw a fit, and you come back and like I can do it for 15, and they'll deal with that.
What's
So,
the reverse of a magnifying glass?
that's where you hold the binoculars backwards.
Yeah. What is that called?
Ugh.
I will just say, for those of you who are not on board with the giant monitor theory, I have never had anybody complain that their
Display is
spaces
too
are
big.
not as fancy as they would have thought because of the massive wall of a display now. So
No, there's a place. I get it.
Unless it's a 4-person seat and that seat
Yeah.
is like sun tanning their cheek.
I will say this: if you want to talk a true cuddle space, one of those little bullet tables with a display on, I don't care. Buy whatever the crap you want. I'm not going to deal with that one anyway. So
I thought that's what we were
Okay.
talking about.
Well, no,
no, these are proper conference
So-
spaces with an
No, but
actual
yeah, the things
table.
that
And
you're
What if
Justin,
the
to your-
conference room
knowledge,
isn't big enough for that display? Do you turn it portrait
Mhm.
and use it that way?
I tell them to find a bigger space. No,
Letterbox.
Yeah.
Justin, to your point about furniture, I find it amusing that we have these holy shit moments on equipment, and yet this same group will go be looking at like 16 new chairs for the conference table at
dude.
$2,000 a piece.
Dude,
These are
don't even
six
get me
they will-
started on furniture.
Right, so they will bulk at like $16,000 for this, and then they're
grew
going to
these
spend that
trees?
much on 4 chairs. So
Yeah, I had a faculty member come at us, one in an active learning room. Didn't want to lose any student seats from traditional learning, which we all know that's hard to do in a fixed size room, right? So she had, I don't know, I think she had like 10 or 20 grand. And us and the facilities was there. We're like, yeah, she's wanting to do all this. And we're talking floor boxes. We're talking this. And we get to budget. And they start in on the furniture budget. Like, yeah, furniture budget's probably $50,000, $60,000. And she goes, okay, we don't know the budget yet that she has. And we're like, well, how much is the AV? I was like, the AV is going to be, it's going to be 20 to 30 easily, if not more. What do you ignored that the furniture budget was over her entire project budget and started hounding on us about how expensive we were. It's like, what is the disconnect here? That you don't understand that the thing that you want to do, you can't even afford the furniture, much less the technology. And here you are berating the AV people in the room for being too expensive.
Mm-hmm. Value.
Explain
that value. Okay.
I can't.
All right, well, what about you, Larry? What are you running? You got some standards you running that same?
I've got standards for the small and the medium. Like anything that I would consider a large is usually like an odd shape or something, and we just haven't done enough of them for me to say, yep, this is a standard. Like I know the equipment we're going to use for the most part, but like the way it's configured and everything is such a variance that, you know, whether we're using a credenza or all those things, I don't really have a good large standard. My smallest to small, I'm right in that, 5,000 to 6,000 range. And that's just a small monitor with a micro form factor PC, wireless keyboard and mouse, and a sound bar. Like it's about as basic as you can get. Then the medium, it can be anywhere from about 12 to 15. Adds very basic control and some other things, but it's in that general range.
Okay. Justin, do you have such a thing down there? Would you have a standard package for your small?
I'm actually
just
looking
curious
at it.
based on-
So
okay.
What are you selling?
Sell it to me. Yeah.
So I just designed a solution for our clients for the international building, and we have a small, medium, and large conference room in this building. So
would you say these are standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So
you said there's a small, medium, and a large in the same project?
In the same building. Yeah, they want to update all of them at the same time because it's an older building and it's all older
Boy,
technology.
how did you sell them on that idea?
Yeah, geez, good convincing.
I did, and that was their idea. Remember, this is all driven by clients.
For those of you listening only, I can only describe what Justin just did as the skunk guy.
Let's not talk about skunks either right now. For those of you who don't know, my whole house smells like a skunk.
Yeah, that was a fun video.
So you need to talk about your hygiene. So.
Yeah, well, it's not that. That's a different show. Anyway, so small conference room.
Showering with Justin.
65. Shit. 60. I'm ignoring that. 65-inch conference bar. Looks like I priced it out to be $5,500 plus labor for equipment. The medium conference room, it looks like I spec'd some bigger cameras and some ceiling microphones, and that one
bigger cameras. I just imagine a guy there with like a handheld camera running the camera.
Mark, I pulled a bunch of cameras from Research.
Betamax with a converter on it.
It's not ADA compliant sticking off that front wall, but that's
well, and there's a union guy in there too. His name is
Saul.
Don't
have unions here. No,
we're not doing this meeting right now. We're not doing this meeting. We're on lunch.
Yeah,
I gotta go in 10 minutes, guys. So
figure 8 patterns.
That one was $11,500 plus labor.
That's a steal. Yeah,
that must be not bad. Camera.
Our large conference room was only $13,000 plus labor for that one, which it wasn't that much bigger. Now the large conference room in this case,
how much of that technology is the same from that medium to that large?
All of it,
percentage wise,
about 70%.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's pretty much there. Okay. Now they're a little. That's not our. So this conference room holds, I think 14 or 15 people. So large. This isn't over 20 person. So the two conference rooms I just talked about were almost the same size, so it had a scale just ever so slightly.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
I'm telling you guys need to raise your prices and then walk it back.
Okay.
I've just learned going in too low is not gonna.
No, I'm not trying to go in low. I'm just taking a look at the landscape of things I have that we trust.
We add
and
contingency to our numbers that Chris does. Anywhere from 10 to 20% on all projects.
I'm 25% across the board. Also, my numbers included full installation, and I have been buffering that as well too.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, my typical less than 10 is less than 10 people is the 8,000 installed.
Okay.
8,500.
For those of you who are listening.
How else would they be experiencing this? Go ahead.
So for those of you listening, it's like, oh, that contingency thing, that's a great idea. Be careful, because don't make this mistake we did, because we work with facilities on some of these projects. What does facilities do with their projects? Contingency. What does IT do with their projects?
I do that deliberately.
Contingency.
Sure.
How do we funnel projects at this university on campus? Through facilities. So we were adding, because there was not a lot of coordination. Our contingency was getting doubled and tripled, and it was really blowing.
I know
projects
that,
up.
and I'm well aware of that, and I do it deliberately, because I throw in 25, they throw another 15 on top of that, and guarantees the project comes in under budget every freaking time.
So what are y'all doing with that extra money? Just buying extra horses?
Don't worry about it.
That's not what contingency means.
No,
well,
okay.
No, you got to. That money's got to be allocated for something, and it's got to.
It has to be allocated. It doesn't have to be
go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a difference between
encumbering.
I know,
cannot
but
think of the last contingency project that there was leftover.
We have leftover contingency a lot.
Oh, almost all of ours
used.
Almost all of ours do, and when there's too much, then there's discussions about why did you guys screw up? Because
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, I get that. I would rather have that conversation than we're 10 grand under budget or over budget on this, and we're short. So,
I get that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Jamie, what about your bigger one? You got a bigger solution?
We'll call it executive suite.
$38,000
with the ceiling.
Is that direct view LED wall?
With ceiling mics and all the fancy accoutrements is 18. It's under 18 installed. That's 86-inch displays.
Okay.
Is that the Walmart version?
Jamie, that's too big of a display. Justin said not to use that display.
So, I mean, there was
That's
no,
his executive.
Yeah,
That was his biggest one.
I usually
So
I'm
his
with you,
executive
Chris.
huddle space, it's an
I
86
usually
with a
try
chair
to
against
err on
it.
the side of as large as it can be, but there are limits to when you walk into
I
an
get
8
it,
by
yes.
10 room and you're like, oh my god.
If the project is an old office they're converting to a 5-person conference room, then no, they don't need an 80. Well, maybe they do need an 86.
See,
But-
there you are. Guilty of your own rule.
okay.
So I'm doing one now in our admin building where previously someone tried, this is an older system, someone tried to replicate the old people plus content model with 2 55s and the camera between it and all that stuff. And I pointed out that, first of all, in order for everyone to see that stuff, the displays are all too small anyway. And secondly, are you setting up your calls to always show people? And they're like, no, we just show the same thing on both. I'm like, then just get a single big monitor.
Wasting.
It's the best.
So
Yeah.
Right, well, I think we actually were all relatively close on all of our assumptions
Yeah.
and standards there. So
we should do
about
a
the same.
scatter plot. I want to see it.
yeah, we'll put
With standard deviations, so
interns
that's
get
1,
on
2,
that.
and 3.
Get on that. We want a graphic created. So, want to hear if you guys listening have anything close to what we were just discussing. Send it to us. How far off are we? Or I'm sure we're missing a lot of the different pieces as well, but something tells me
But
we're
if
not.
you use Zoom Room,
Yeah.
got this thing from
Run it all to the
Poly.
cloud. It's great.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll put
All
the
right,
Logitech.
let's take a real quick break here. We'll come back and yell about bring
Things
your
you
own
shouldn't
meeting
do.
crap,
Yeah.
which you shouldn't be doing. There, spoiler. You can skip and end the show right now. Set your alarms, everyone. The AVSuperfriends are taking over AV in the AM on the Twitters. That's right, on May 21st, in just a few days, on May 21st, your precious AV in the AM will be forever ruined by the AVSuperfriends. Here's how it works.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
Got that? Then go answer everyone else's questions. Then go comment on their answers. Then go comment on their comments about their answers to your question. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how this works. Anyway, how do you participate? Well, first you need the Twitter, so go get that at, it's www. Look it up on the internet.com. And then you wait. We're not starting anything until early on Sunday, May 21st, about 8 a.m. Eastern, after a complete balanced breakfast, or whenever we feel like it. And if we don't have things going by then, just wait longer. Search for the hashtag AV and the AM to participate. We'll see you soon. So for our final segment, since we're talking about meeting rooms and we love meeting rooms, here's a question. Is bring your own meeting a thing? And why is the answer no? So please stop. The number of spaces I've been to in multiple institutions where the first question, not first question, but the first thing that comes up is like, can we just put a computer in here and just log into this and just be done with it? Because then we know it always freaking works. And yes, right now there are hundreds of people yelling at their car stereos because they all do it. It works fine, and they've got 400 rooms, and that's their standard on campus, and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But
they're
please
also the
stop.
same people that are asking, what kind of adapters do you guys use that actually work reliably all the time?
Do you know we have a software product that can do some of that stuff too?
What's an adapter?
Right. So Chris, you're a yes on this. Bring your own meeting is what I'm hearing.
That's what I heard.
I ask people, I'm moving away from bring your own meeting. I'm going full BYOD, but it's bring your own display.
Is
You
it-
guys don't like my 86-inch displays
Are we
everywhere.
talking
Yeah.
like as an option, or like this is the
So, yeah,
only
let's-
option?
And
is
that's the
bring your
point I
own?
wanted to get to,
Right,
Jamie. Thank you.
exactly.
Yeah. So in a standard space, it sounds like we're all providing a PC,
to host
unless
that
it's
service.
unless it's like a special case. But they by default they'll get a PC. So from a standpoint of bring your own meeting, what about the ability to do that as an ad, not a replacement?
I don't like it.
I haven't found
moving
it
my
to be
entire
reliable
infrastructure.
yet.
Yeah, I don't like moving
All right.
my entire infrastructure over to accommodate somebody's device.
But are you under a true IP-based system?
No,
I do
I just haven't found the reasoning that justified doing it yet.
Okay. No, that's fair.
Yeah, I most of my spaces, but I have been, and I've told you guys that I put in the USB-C dock and I duplicate the video and audio streams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to have an extra capture card that goes right into that dock. No, it is not foolproof. Because we never know what, but I do this in places where the department does issue machines. So if it's an all MacBook department and it's their space, then I know that I can put in a CalDigit dock, and for 90% of their things, barring software updates, something stupid that happens with OSs, doesn't matter which
Never.
company. they can do that. Now, when it doesn't, there is the local PC to kick over to, but it can be available. I have been putting that into classrooms as well. Now, that's a little bit more tricky because what I found is some of the new imaging does knock down some of the display port drivers for USB-C and such. But no, I've been trying to, because I am that jackass that likes to bring his own machine to do everything. And so I try to make sure that it accommodates me. But there's always the primary utilization is always the local PC. Now my son goes to a university that provides everybody the exact same HP laptop. The entire campus uses the exact same machine. And it's different because now you can plan around one machine, one image, one software package. And so that's why I wanted to break that down. Like, wait, this isn't a terrible idea if you have predictable and repeatable
control. You have to have control over it. And I think that's the point we're all trying to make.
I always have the extra PC in there because inevitably if something fails or the battery dies or some stupid laptop issue.
So for us, our CIO has also shared that all that experience is UIT brand, right? If there's a failure in that experience for a meeting, whether it's faculty, student, administrator, whatever it may be, that reflects on IT as a service provider. And so where do we want to put our chips? On hoping that somebody else's personal device is going to have everything we need and we have access to support that device, or put the known commodity that's already tied to our support mechanism in our desk in there, which we know we can connect to and provide service and uptime.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's basically what's been our driving factor.
For us, our driving factor.
That's a weird. Hold on, Larry. That's
Jamie.
weird.
Yeah,
Jamie
you
has a
look
weird
angry,
face.
so you can go first.
No, I'm going back to this. Or we're not leaving this Oregon State thing.
No,
that's a
fine.
weird
gloves
perspective.
off. Gloves
No,
off.
I agree with that
even-
perspective.
Even with the local machine, those folks jack up the settings and jack up the shit all the time.
It doesn't matter. It's not
How
about
does that
them
reflect upon
so
you?
we do have an image specifically for these, right? They're imaged for these spaces, and
Yeah, me too.
it's a known commodity. It's part of just our IT best practices. We want to make sure that is tied in. We can connect to that to assist remotely, to reduce the reliance upon boots on the ground to run over it to do something. Whereas if somebody calls in and says, yeah, I'm on my own machine, I may or may not be affiliated with the university, I'm in Zoom, it's really important, I have a bunch of deans in here with me, I need this to work, what are you going to do?
Tell them to log into the computer.
Right, exactly. So it's about just reducing that risk part and the going with as much as the known commodity as we can to provide an SLA.
I think you both are saying the same thing because you all both want high support, but Jamie has a lot of the control aspect under his belt where he can do what Mark is basically saying on a BYO meeting. I think
you can move the I's and the O's, but you don't have control of what's in between.
It bothers me that the CIO said
a lot of letters between
their thinking is that what I heard was a failure within our control is a failure at all, right? And
that's very black and white. I get it. But...
Yes, it's very black and white for something that you honestly don't control. You don't control a lot of the shit that you're deploying and they're using in these meetings, whether it's your own image or
we
not.
We do, though. In a space that we say, these are our federated services and this is what we want to use, and we stand behind this for support, and we are contractually aligned with this service provider, that's all known. We can say, if you're doing it and you're in this experience, we can back you up. Now, will things go wrong? Absolutely, things are going to go wrong. Things will fail, whatever. But that's where we're trained on. That's what our staff are trained on. That's what we're prepared to support. We can't be held accountable for every little thing under the sun. With best effort, yes, we'll do our best. But if somebody's using a space that we provided hardware for, and we did everything except provide the actual hosting service, anything can happen. Like it's about just reducing what we're going to be held accountable for.
So I guess I wanted some more clarification on this. Mm-hmm. It sounded to me like, yeah, if it all fails, we failed. Like,
that's still going to be
to the client.
To the client,
it's
failure is a failure.
The Zoom updates we've already discussed.
Because Jamie, if somebody brings in their own computer and it's all jacked up and they try to connect their own thing, they're still going to have problems in the conference room. So
and I'm not saying we don't know how to make it work. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that we know this works very well and scales appropriately, and we can support it 9 times out of 10.
I think failure is a very strong word to use here, and I think we're just fishing for a different word, because what Jamie's probably hearing, and I just heard a speech on the sports side about this, but when things break in IT, then we fail, so we all fail every day. Well,
it's okay to fail.
It's okay to have learning opportunities.
Yeah. Fail fast.
But failure is a very strong word, and I think we're splitting hairs here.
I think you're probably right in this. I don't disagree that it is much better to have everything together.
The incident.
Right. You guys, I think you all are saying the same thing under different expectation levels.
I guess at some point, I don't.
Yeah, let's break it down. SLA. We can provide a higher level service level agreement by having no commodity in there and reduce the
Have you reviewed
incidents.
your KPIs recently?
Exactly.
Yes, I have.
The verbiage. So,
I'm sorry. I want a clarification, Larry. Go ahead.
I completely forgot what I was about to say now.
You agreed with me. That's all that was important.
I did.
His finger was going, though. That finger wound up.
His finger, he gave me the eye roll, and I'm like, hold on a minute.
Yeah. I
do
think
not
I
want to
was
be held
saying
accountable for things that aren't. I guess that's my thing. I don't want to be considered as my department failed because of something that is not within my control, whether that be a Zoom update, a Microsoft update.
Failure's a harsh word.
But I now have more.
All right, moving on from the failure thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Larry, go.
I think what I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted.
I'm going to interrupt you again.
Was that in addition to the failure, and I think that's a real thing because we're not admins on that person's laptop typically, and there's just lots of things that could go wrong, is I don't see the value add with this because I am trying to constantly keep our systems as cost effective as possible so I can sell them more often and get more buy-in. But in order to do that, I need to show them.
But value add is in the eye of the beholder, though.
It is, but I'm just not seeing where, you can bring your laptop and it will probably work is that big of a selling feature when I can give them a slightly cheaper, better experience that will work more often.
Mobile first, standpoint, go there, and if we can get there, we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
And I don't.
So let me let me throw in one more thing, which no one else has brought up yet. A couple of you talked around it. This idea, the value add, this idea of that to do that requires a different sort of system, or does it in a truly modern transport system where it can leverage multiple simultaneous device and content streams? So yes, you can provide the capability for a secondary computer to run the system without affecting the need for larger switchers, larger encoders, all that stuff. So there are systems that do that. I'm doing that in 3 spaces this summer purely as a trial. And I've mentioned this before on the show. I'm doing it. I'm not telling people it's going to work. No, let me rephrase. I'm not telling people I'm doing it until I can confirm it works and works reliably because it is a brand new thing. But if indeed it does work, then it is a value add that requires and to Jamie's favorite thing about QSYS, another software license and a single cable, at which point potentially we can now provide this same sort of thing in the right space for very little added cost.
Yeah,
but this is not in
Larry,
a small, this is not in your small or your medium conference space, is it?
I'm not putting it in those now, but the capability is there for it. In my medium, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
it could do
but
it.
your small does not have, your smalls and mediums prices were up there, so it probably is. But everybody else is.
Yeah.
In my small, I have so much in there, I give everybody their own camera bar.
Even at that, Larry, I've been starting to put it in. And it's really once most of the other infrastructure's there's always an extra output from the camera.
But this doesn't require an extra output.
So, I think
but it's not. You don't have to overplan it. Your camera usually has 7 outputs on it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Your audio DSP usually use the USB out and then just use an analog line out.
I want to use component,
and you're really not adding
composite.
anything. You're adding less than $1,000, and
that's where I'm at in the whole take on this. Is I don't want to do anything that is providing another physical cable that somebody has to understand where it goes and where to plug it into their machine and go. And when we get that
the
true
cabling thing is its own problem.
Yeah, when we get there of the true AV over IP experience, people can just do it over typical network, not
over the wireless, because that
wireless.
works
They're joining, but why bend our entire infrastructure to accommodate it?
Well, I'll just say from my standpoint, no, I'm not
plug in a weird hole, but you want them to log into some weird ass network stream.
No, I don't think I want that.
Now I'm just being a jerk.
So I will say this from my standpoint on bring your own meeting and BYOD for UC connections and conferencing and whatnot. If I start providing that wide scale, like I'm doing 3 rooms this summer to try it. If I start doing it, it will never be in place of the installed devive.
Somebody out there is screaming. Somebody is screaming Teams rooms. No. I hear you. Don't. No, I know we can do it. You can start and move and move around meetings. I get it. It can be done.
You can transfer the meeting from your phone to this device.
It's always an alternate path. It's for those people who are usually more comfortable with it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, you heard it here. Chris loves it. So.
Wait, what now? What happened?
Chris loves it in his $50,000 86-inch huddle space.
$740,000.
Chris, you sound like a consultant.
Direct view LED everywhere.
Yeah,
Justin, I'm gonna spread the love, so I'm gonna have one of everything from every different manufacturer.
And he rips the IR filter off the front of the damn LEDs and sunburn city.
It's not quite that bad, but
you should make all those 86 inches start up on a white screen first thing in the morning
with a logo just
on the 10,000 Kelvin scale,
like the brightest ass white you can find, man. Just pow.
Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.
I'd like to contact you about your extended warranty.